So there's an article in a negotiation journal called Gender and Negotiation in the Small. Are women perceived to be more cooperative than men? So this was essentially a study, a kind of academic study. Lots of sort of blind tests and exercises were carried out in order to reveal some of the information that I'm going to talk about today. Some of those academic exercises and the research, it proved that women are more sensitive to the context of any negotiation, particularly when it involves a relationship. I'm starting with what are women's strengths in negotiation. It's essentially that we're very good at relationship building and we're very sensitive to relationships, and more often than not we want to build them rather than damage them. And it is fair to say that we are also sensitive to issues of fairness. It's something that, it's a pattern that's sort of indicated fairly strongly when women's and men's negotiation techniques and behaviours are assessed. All this implies that women are likely actually to be more successful in quite delicate negotiations in which long-term relationships are important. That's where our strength lies. I think where women struggle sometimes in negotiating, it's in shorter, faster, potentially more bullish negotiations. What is more important in a negotiation is stereotyping. More than anything else is likely to create differences in behaviour on both sides and can cause trouble in negotiations. Now, what's this stereotype? I said women were a bit fairer than men, but actually the perception that women are fairer is really strong. That is genuinely, according to scientific evidence, is that both men and women expect women to be fairer to them in any exchange than they expect a man to be. So here's an example of a tiny little exercise that was done. They had two envelopes of cash, and they said you can choose either envelope. One's from a woman and one's from a man. Which envelope of cash would you like to take? Both men and women, you know what I'm going to say, chose the envelope from the woman because they thought a woman would be fairer to them and more generous than a man. Again, I guess that stems from women being perceived as caring and motherly and wanting the best for other people. So something else that I thought was that just blew my mind when I was reading this study, both men and women who were asked about working with a female manager who had negotiated for a higher salary, both men and women were, and I quote, disinclined to work with female managers who had negotiated for a higher compensation because they were perceived to be less nice, more demanding, and insufficiently concerned about organisation and relationships. Now, when they were asked about working with a male manager who had asked for a higher compensation, none of that had any bearing whatsoever on what these people said. Yeah, I'd be happy to work for him. Sounds like a nice guy. Sounds like he'll work hard for the organisation. This is really shocking and really problematic. What can we do about it? Partly, again, we go back to what Peter talked about. It's about us, all of us, tackling stereotypes and in our organisations thinking more about how does my organisation allow women employees to negotiate? Is it clear to them that they can negotiate? So here's another thing. It goes back to this point about women asking for less. If it's not clear that a woman can ask for a pay rise during her annual review of her performance, she's not sure whether she should or not, and so more times than not she won't. Whereas men in studies have been proved to say, well, I don't know whether I can ask for it or not, but I'm going to ask for it. So if you as an organisation can reduce ambiguity, whether that's in your job adverts or in your appraisal cycles or in your when you're recruiting somebody, reduce the ambiguity, make it clear what is negotiable, because that will help women decide, okay, I'm going to try and negotiate, and you're kind of empowering me to negotiate.